વાસુદેવાય. ઓમ નમો ભગવતે વાસુદેવાય. ઓમ નમો ભગવતે વાસુદેવાય. Hare Krishna. So today evening we are reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita chapter 2 entitled Contents of the Gita Summarized. Text number 20. Na jayate mriyate va kadachin. Na jayate mriyate va kadachin. Nayam bhutva bhavita va na bhuyah. Ajo nityah shashvatoyam purano. Na hanyate hanyamane sharire. Na jayate mriyate va kadachin. Nayam bhutva bhavita va na bhuyah. Ajo nityah shashvatoyam purano. Na hanyate hanyamane sharire. Na jayate mriyate va kadachin. Nayam bhutva bhavita va na bhuyah. Ajo nityah shashvatoyam purano. Na hanyate hanyamane sharire. Can someone repeat?
Na jayate mriyate va kadachin.
Na jayate mriyate va kadachin.
Nayam bhutva bhavita va na bhuyah.
Nayam bhutva bhavita va na bhuyah.
Ajo nitya shashvato ayam purano.
Ajo nityah shashvatoyam purano. Na hanyate hanyamane sharire. Ladies, Mataji. Na jayate mriyate va kadachin. Nayam bhutva bhavita bhana bhuyah. Ajo nityah shashvatoyam purano. Na hanyate hanyamane sharire. Please repeat word to word translation. Na, never. Jayate, takes birth. Mriyate, dies. Va, either. Kadachit, at any time, past, present or future. Na, never. Ayam, this. Bhutva, having come into being. Bhavita, will come to be. Va or na not bhuyah or is again coming to be. Ajah unborn, nityah eternal, shashvatah permanent, ayam this, puranah the oldest, na never, hanyate is killed, hanyamane being killed, sharire the body. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Abhay Charana Arvinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. For the soul there is neither birth nor death at any time. He has not come into being, does not come into being, and will not come into being. He is unborn, eternal, ever existing and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. Purport. Qualitatively, the small atomic fragmental part of the Supreme Spirit is one with the Supreme. He undergoes no changes like the body. Sometimes the soul is called the steady or kutastha. The body is subject to 6 kinds of transformations. It takes its birth from the womb of the mother's body, remains for some time, grows, produces some effects, gradually dwindles, and at last vanishes into oblivion. The soul, however, does not go through such changes. The soul is not born, but because he takes on a material body, the body takes its birth. The soul does not take birth there, and the soul does not die. Anything which has birth also has death. And because the soul has no birth, he therefore has no past, present, or future. He is eternal, ever existing, and primeval. That is, there is no trace in the history of his coming into being. Under the impression of the body, we seek the history of birth, etc. of the soul. The soul does not at any time become old as the body does. The so-called old man therefore feels himself to be in the same spirit as in his childhood or youth. The changes of the body do not affect the soul. The soul does not deteriorate like a tree, nor anything material. The soul has no byproducts either. The byproducts of the body, namely children, are also different individual souls. And owing to the body, they appear as children of a particular man. The body develops because of the soul's presence, but the soul has neither offshoots nor change. Therefore, the soul is free from the 6 changes of the body. In the Katha Upanishad 1-18, we also find a similar passage which reads, Na jayate mriyate va vipaschin nayam kutaschinna babuva kaschit ajo nityah shashvato yam purano nahanyate hanyamane sharire. The meaning and purport of this verse is the same as in the Bhagavad Gita. But here in this verse, there is one special word, vipaschit, which means learned or with knowledge. The soul is full of knowledge or full always with consciousness. Therefore, consciousness is the symptom of the soul. Even if one does not find the soul within the heart where he is situated, one can still understand the presence of the soul simply by the presence of consciousness. Sometimes we do not find the sun in the sky owing to clouds or for some other reason, but the light of the sun is always there, and we are convinced that it is there for daytime. As soon as there is a little light in the sky early in the morning, we can understand that the sun is in the sky. Similarly, since there is some consciousness in all bodies, whether man or animal, we can understand the presence of the soul. This consciousness of the soul is, however, different from the consciousness of the Supreme, because the Supreme Consciousness is all knowledge, past, present, and future. The consciousness of the individual soul is prone to be forgetful. When he is forgetful of his real nature, he obtains education and enlightenment from the superior lessons of Krishna. But Krishna is not like the forgetful soul. If so, Krishna's teachings of Bhagavad Gita would be useless. There are two kinds of souls, namely the minute particle soul, Anu Atma, and the super soul, Vibhu Atma. This is also confirmed in the Katha Upanishad in this way, 1-20. Anoraniya mahato mahiyan atmasya jantor nihito guhayam tam akrutu pashyati vita shoko dhatu prasadan mahimanam. Both the super soul Paramatma and the atomic soul Jivatma are situated on the same tree of the body within the same heart of the living being, and only one who has become free from all material desires as well as lamentations can, by the grace of the Supreme, understand the glories of the soul. Krishna is the fountainhead of the super soul also, as it will be disclosed in the following chapters. And Arjuna is the atomic soul, forgetful of his real nature. Therefore, he requires to be enlightened by Krishna or by his bona fide representative, the spiritual master. Jai. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatya Deshatarine Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gauratushe Namaha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. Vancha kalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhu bhayeva patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So this is one of the beautiful verses of second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, wherein the nature of the soul is very explicitly described. Here onwards we'll see Krishna speaking more about the soul, the nature of the soul, how it is, and things in relation to that. न जायते म्रियते वा कदाचिन नायम भूत्वा भविता वा न भूयः अजो नित्यः शाश्वतोऽयं पुराणो न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे. The soul, there is neither birth nor death at any time. He has not come into being, does not come into being, and will not come into being. He is unborn, eternal, ever existing, and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. So, very faith-giving statements and description of the qualitative nature of the living entity or the soul is been described by Lord Krishna to Arjuna. This is very important subject matter, discussing about the soul and the super soul. And why it is so? Because many of the transcendentalists or spiritualists who are practicing or having some inclination for spiritual understanding of the subject matter, they have very big misconceptions about what is soul, what is super soul, what is relation between soul and super soul. So many philosophies are there in this regard, and Srila Prabhupada, time to time, he discusses these different philosophies and emphasizes and gives a clear understanding which Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has brought for every one of our enlightenment. Achinta Bhed Abheda Tattva. Simultaneous oneness and difference between the living entity and the Supreme Lord, Super Soul. A very beautiful concept Srila Prabhupada talks in his purport, beginning first paragraph. The soul does not take birth there. The soul does not die. Anything which has birth also has death. And because the soul has no birth, he therefore has no past, present or future. He is eternal, ever existing, primeval. Under the impression of the body, we seek the history of birth, etc. of the soul. So many people, they try to find out the origin or how the soul came into existence. And why such a research is carried out, Srila Prabhupada clarifies, under the impression of the body. When one has an impression of the body, in the sense, when one thinks in terms of the body, his thought process is designed or is on the basis of the concept of the body, because body has a beginning at one point of time, because it takes birth from the womb of the mother. So, the realm of the time or the feeling of the time's existence or the changes as the time flows is pursued only on the bodily level or on the material platform. On the spiritual platform, there is existence of time, but the existence of the time is not meant for affecting the changes or bringing the changes. In this world, we understand as the time flows, everything changes. Time is a destroyer, as Krishna says, Bhagavad Gita, later chapter. Time, I am the destroyer of everything. So as the time flows, we see things are dwindling and getting destroyed. That's the power of time. Time destroys everything. But the soul, being a spiritual particle, he is not affected by the flow of the time. And therefore, this idea of trying to find out the origin of the soul becomes meaningless, because it is eternal. Krishna here clearly says, Ajaha, unborn, Nityaha, eternal. That is the nature of the soul. It is eternal. Mamaevamsho jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana. For Sanatan, eternity, the soul is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. So, it's irrelevant if we try to find out or try to go back to find out what is the origin of the soul. It's irrelevant because it's not on a material platform. The relevance of the time is only felt on the material platform, in the material world. That's the place where the time shows its power. But in the spiritual world, the time does not show its power. Time is conspicuous by its presence. It's present, but it's conspicuous. Means it cannot show the effects which it shows here in the material world. Everything is destroyed by the force of time. But in the spiritual realm, it's not like that. So therefore, many times, those who are always thinking, they have a very strong mind of and very habit of mental speculation, trying to squeeze out some meaning or some understanding or some concept by twisting their brains and mind. They try to find out what is the origin of the soul, when it came into existence. But such a attempt is on the material realm only. So therefore, nobody can find out. And when it says that eternally we are fragmental part and parcel of Krishna, then eternally fragmental part, will there be a time when Krishna was alone and then he created all of us? Such a one tries to stretch his mind to figure out or to have such a conception. Maybe there was a time when Krishna was alone and then he expanded himself, or all the living entities came and the spiritual world came. Because we hear even Srimad Bhagavatam describes about the creation of the material world, how it came into existence. So naturally that flow of the mind, that thought process goes back also with Krishna, where we try to find out, will there be a time when he was alone and then he expanded? Because creation or something takes birth, immediately that conception comes that there was nothing and now it came. But it's not like that. The spiritual world, Krishna, everything is existing eternally. And this is a concept which we cannot understand at all. Because our mind, being creation of the material element, it has no ability to conceive something which is spiritual or to experience fundamentals of spiritual world. It's very difficult for the mind to conceive it, because he always thinks in terms of past, present and future. That's how the mind works. That's the thought process. That's how it functions. So therefore, such an attempt is always doomed when one tries to figure out what's the origin. And that's the idea behind this. Scientists, they are trying to find out a universal theory. They are trying to find out one big formula by which everything can be explained. It's not possible. Such a universal formula cannot be. Because such a variegatedness is there. How Krishna's each and every energy works. It's miracle. The more we try to study and understand, more we understand that it's not understandable. It's so vast and so deep. How Krishna's energies, transform from one form to another, and how the energies are manifesting the different effects and phenomenons. It's all wonder when we see the nature also around us. Such wonderful things are there, fantastic things are there to see and observe. Only, by seeing all these things, we can just bow down our head in front of, Supreme Lord Krishna. That, my dear Lord, just like Arjuna does when he saw the universal form, he just folded his hand and said, my dear Lord, your vastness cannot be fathomed. How vast you are, how big you are, cannot be fathomed. He just humbles himself, understands that I am very tiny, puny, very insignificant in front of your prowess and your personality. So same way, if somebody comes to this conclusion, he is very fortunate. When he bows down, even Newton and Einstein, they explain, we have discovered so many formulas and so many phenomena, scientific phenomena. But what discovery we have done, this discovery is just a speck of a dust on the seashore. And we can understand how much so many dust particles are there on the seashore. Unlimited. We cannot even count. So many. So, a person who has a proper mindset or proper understanding of how phenomena of the material world happen, he bows down and understands that it's ununderstandable. It's not possible to understand everything like this. There are inconceivabilities in the world. And one understands and accepts his subordinate position and listens to that great person who has created everything and understands what message he has to give us and follow that. That's the perfection of life. And that's what Krishna is trying to tell Arjuna. Beginning with this knowledge, Buddhi Yoga, he is removing all the anxiety and the lamentation which Arjuna is going through on the battlefield. He is there with all weapons and all army waiting to start fight. And Arjuna is afraid. He is fearful. He is not feeling like fighting because he sees all friends and relatives are standing in front of him. So his heart is overcome by feelings of love, respect. And he is losing his courage or determination to fight. And then Krishna is advising him, giving him this knowledge of the soul, that my dear Arjuna, don't think that these people they are standing in front of you, they will ever die, because they are not the body. And in fact the body is always going to die. In the back also, in the past also bodies were dying, present also bodies are dying, in the future also bodies will be dying. But what remains eternal, ever existing, is the spirit soul. So many great personalities who understood some little understanding of soul or eternity, they also portrayed their understanding to give a message to the world. Many great personalities in the past. The great king Sikandar, he practically controlled the whole world practically. But when he died, his body was like this, spreading both the hands outstretched, giving the message that, see, I am the king of the world, but what I have nothing. When I am dying, I am giving up everything. So, these great personalities, they give us a very important conceptual understanding of how to look towards the life and towards the world, and how to accept the world and how to accept or utilize the life we have got. And Krishna is very mercifully, he's revealing these wonderful qualities of the soul to bring us a sense of fearlessness. Because when there is a light, darkness is vanished. And when darkness goes away, fear also goes away. Isn't it? So, there is a beautiful verse I am remembering from Bhagavatam. Bhayam dvitiya abhiniveshatasyat ishadapeyasya viparyayo asmritihi. It says, Bhayam. Why bhay? Why fear takes birth in the heart of a living entity? Why? Abhiniveshatasyat ishad. Ishad means the Supreme Lord. Ishad apeyasya viparyayo asmritihi. Because he has forgotten Isha, his Lord. He has forgotten his Lord. That's why the bhai has taken birth in his heart. But if he remembers Krishna, bhai will go away. Fear will go away. Why Krishna is giving this knowledge of the soul, is to make us fearless, is to make us understand that this body which we are having is not everything. This body is just a carrier. A carrier is used to go from one place to another place. That's the purpose why the carrier is made. The carriage is made. So this body is a carriage. It's carrying the soul, the real force, the real life force. It's carrying. And how we live this life, with what consciousness we live this life, or we use this body to be engaged in, that's what determines our next birth, where we will be. I was listening to Prabhupada, he was giving class on the same verse. There Prabhupada was saying that people have so many ideas, they think, so many plans they make. Okay, I have to do this. And they think about it, meditate about it, and make plans how to do this. And suppose in the course of doing that, he happens to die, the body happens to finish. Then what will happen? The thought process is finished? No. The thought process remains in the subtle conception. The conception of that idea remains in the mind. And when he gets the another body, then the same conception again starts flowing, again starts manifesting, and he again starts engaging in the same way. That's why we hear so many people by birth, or as they start growing, they become expert in certain fields. Why? Because they must have worked on those fields in their previous life so much meditation, so much contemplation, so much hard work they must have done, because of which in this life it's so easy, fast for them to just grab it and start going ahead from the same place which they have left in the previous life. So Prabhupada, in the end part of the purport, he says, Arjuna is the atomic soul, forgetful of his real nature. Therefore, before that. Where it goes. Both the super soul and the atomic soul are situated on the same tree of the body, within the same heart of the living being. And only one who has become free from all material desires as well as lamentations can, by the grace of the Supreme, understand the glories of the soul. Means, unless one gives up this material desires, prajahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogatan. Manogatan, by speculation of the mind, one creates unlimited desires. So as long as one speculates his mind and creates so many desires to enjoy, he will keep taking birth again and again and again. The cycle of birth and death will never end for such a person. Even small desire, if remains, he has to take birth again. Prabhupada used to say, even if you have a desire to take one rasagulla, if it is there, then you will have to take another birth to eat that rasagulla. So, the point is, we cannot become desireless. Prabhupada says, we cannot become stone. We are conscious people, living being. How can we become desireless? It's not possible. But we have to know what is the proper desire and desire that in our heart. And by overwhelming our consciousness and mind with the desired desire which Krishna wants us to have, which Krishna's representatives wants us to have, by having that and living our life using this carrier, we can go back home, back to Godhead. So that's the purpose why this body, this carriage is given, to take us from the material world to the spiritual world, back where our eternal life of the soul's original constitutional position is. And that's what Krishna consciousness is teaching us. Prabhupada has designed, or not only Prabhupada has designed, but Krishna and all the Acharyas and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they have designed the Krishna consciousness movement. And it has been manifested in front of us through this movement how we can practice a life of the spiritual world in the material world. How we can practice. That forum is given by Srila Prabhupada in the form of this International Society of Krishna Consciousness, this movement, where we have a place where we can practice the spiritual life of the spiritual world in the material world. And by which we can be situated, properly situated in our constitutional position. Jivera Swaruphoy Krishnera Nitya Das. We are eternally servant of Krishna. So imbibing that consciousness that I am eternally servant of Krishna and my existence is meant for serving Krishna, pleasing Krishna, and using this wonderful forum Prabhupada has created, practicing this consciousness, will go back home, back to Godhead. So this is what is desired. And this forgetfulness, as Prabhupada mentions in the last line, as Arjuna being an atomic soul, he is forgetful of his real nature. And therefore he requires to be enlightened. And that's why we are required to be enlightened. Why? Because we forget. We train to forget. Prone to forget. And this indicates, or this gives us a realization that how we are small and tiny in front of the Supreme Lord. Because Supreme Lord never forgets. He never has to be reminded of that, oh, in past times maybe Krishna may show he has forgotten something. But that's just for the pastime to have some relish of some rasa and some relationship with his devotees. He may tend to show that he has forgotten something. But when we talk about the tattva principle, Krishna never forgets. He remembers everything. Past, present and future. He knows everything. So Krishna, he never forgets. So he gives us that knowledge of our original position. And we tend to forget it. And why we tend to forget it? Why asmriti comes to us? The foundation or the the source which gives forgetfulness is the rebellion we have exhibited towards Krishna. We have rebelled against Krishna. We want to take position of Krishna. Therefore, we are forgetting Krishna. That is the reason. And when that rebellion is transformed into love, which is actually original, which has got perverted into rebellion, when it is transformed back again into love, one never forgets. That's the foundation of no forgetfulness. We hear of that pastime, how gopis in Vrindavan, they wanted to forget Krishna. So they sat and they started meditating that we don't want to remember Krishna, we want to remember something else. But the more they were trying to remember something else, somehow or other their mind was again getting connected or attracted to Krishna. They were unable to do that. And how? Why? Because they love Krishna so much. Therefore they cannot forget him. And now we are able to forget Krishna because we don't love Krishna that much. We may have some love for Krishna, some appreciation for Krishna. But that deep love is not there. Therefore we are not able to remember him always. That's why we have to be enlightened. That's why we have to be told again and again. That's why we hear. Prabhupada has given us morning hearing, evening hearing. The reason is that because we forget. Because this material, powerful material energy is there, which covers us, covers our knowledge. But when there is a love, then there is no need of reminder. We have reminders, applications in our mobile phones to remind us of something. But if there is a love, then there is no need of reminder. Just once said that, okay, this has to be done. It will be done. There is no need of reminding. But because we lack that loving feelings for Krishna, we have to be reminded of. And that's why Krishna has sent the bona fide representatives in our life. What they do? Chakshudana dilojei janme janme prabhu sei divya gyan ridhe prakashita. Chakshudan, they give us this, chakshu, eyes. They give that, dan, that they benedict us with the chakshu of divya gyan, of transcendental knowledge, by which the avidya, the ignorance of the material world will be removed. Om ajnana timir andhasya jnananjana shalakaya. The spiritual master, by jnananjana, he puts anjan, ointment of jnana in our knowledge, in our eyes, by which the darkness of illusion, nescience, that will go away and we'll be able to see everything clearly. And that's what Krishna is doing. He is doing Jnananjana to Arjuna. Arjuna is overcome with loving feelings. His eyes are overcome. Although Arjuna is a great devotee, but Arjuna, we can learn many aspects, many things from Arjuna. Krishna is using Arjuna to teach us also so many things. How Arjuna is calculating his actions based on a bodily platform, and Krishna doesn't want him to do that. Krishna wants him to understand that this is on the bodily platform and we are eternal souls, and it is your duty what I am telling you to do. You should do that. So Krishna is upbringing the proper understanding, the proper conception of Arjuna, so that he will once again situate himself in that determination. Yes, I want to fight because Krishna wants me to fight. I want to win this war because Krishna wants us to win this war. So that's the proper consciousness and proper desire by which Arjuna should function. And that's what Krishna is trying to do with Arjuna. And with the help of Arjuna, Srila Prabhupada is trying to give us enlightenment and give us proper understanding of how we should give up this rebellious nature towards Krishna, have a favorable feeling for him, by which we'll remember him, by which we'll have proper consciousness of loving him and serving him and utilizing everything for his service, for his pleasure. And that's how our life will become perfect. That's how we'll give up this material nescience or material conceptions and situate ourselves in the spiritual platform or spiritual consciousness. So this is a very wonderful message which Srila Prabhupada is trying to give us, to enlighten us, to open our eyes and situate ourselves on the proper platform where we can develop ourselves more positively and more wonderfully. Thank you all very much for your kind attention. Is there any question? Any comment? Yes, Prabhu?
Srimad Bhagavatam says that
I think there.
at the beginning, somewhere in third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, so that at the beginning, Supreme Krishna was alone, and he felt somewhat insufficient, and then he created, cast his glance over Pradhan and so forth. So kind of at least theoretically we could trace our origin from the time we are injected into material nature. So
Yeah, that description of Bhagavatam is mainly directed to explain the material creation. It doesn't talk about the spiritual creation. It is directed to explain us the understanding of how this material creation came into existence. When Krishna, he glances over the Pradhan, the material energy, it agitates, and with the glance, all the living entities who are rebellious towards Krishna, they are injected into the material world, and then they are given bodies, different bodies based on their conception. So that's how, because there is a need of some explanation about how this material world came into existence. So there are explanations given in that aspect, that Krishna was alone and then he glanced, and then, but that explanation has nothing directly to do with the spiritual existence in that sense. Yeah. So that's how the material creation came into existence, that Krishna expanded into himself into Balaram, and Balaram expanded into Chaturvyu, and then Chaturvyu, the Mahasankarshan is there, from that Mahavishnu came, then Mahavishnu again Chaturvyu came, then second Sankarshan was there, from that Garbhodaksha Vishnu came, from Garbhodaksha Vishnu then Shirodaksha Vishnu came, who manifested in every atom and molecules everywhere. So
does that happen every kalpa, the same process?
Kalpa, no, because this is a primary creation. Primary creation means the creation of the principal factors or principal personalities. That is primary. And secondary creation is done by Brahmaji, where we talk about the kalpa. The kalpa comes into calculation or conception when Brahmaji's creation starts. He creates, and then the kalpa, then everything, the rains come and everything inundated with water, and then everything is finished, and then because that time Brahmaji goes to sleep, and then when he wakes up he saws all other planetary systems are gone, then again he creates. So that happens in the secondary aspect, Brahmaji's aspect. But the primary thing that is created by Supreme Lord, and that's not happening again and again. It's not happening again and again. Mahavishnu, he breathes and unbreathes, means inhales and exhales. That's how the Brahmandas come into existence. And those Brahmandas are the different universes. But we don't hear of any explanation or any understanding wherein this primary creation of these Vishnu Tattvas happen again and again. That's not mentioned.
So when we say that there is a creator of everything, so we call also Krishna supreme creator. So
Yeah.
maybe we should change the term. When you said creator, it means suggest creations.
Yeah, actually these terminologies are used because individuals in this world, they always tend to think on a material level, on a material way. Although we try to explain them spiritual conception, but because they have a mind which only can think of in a material realm of creation and annihilation and birth and death, these conceptions are there in the mind of a person. So when we are describing a phenomenon in line with the conception, it's easy for him to appreciate what is being spoken, and then he accepts it and puts his faith, and then tries to accept the instructions, spiritual instructions which come along with that, and applies himself to the process. Otherwise, if something is spoken which is not incoherent with his current understanding or conceptions of how he thinks, then it is very difficult to convince. Very, very difficult. He will think what you are speaking is illogical. I cannot put faith. Because a person, he needs, he wants to have some proof or something tangible which he can see or which he can experience, at least which he can think of, conceive of with his mind. If we don't give such a understanding in the beginning, it is very difficult for him to develop that appreciation of what is being spoken and how it is correct and how it is logical. Because person's mind is like that. He thinks logically, he thinks in a proven way, or how things are proved and like that.
In that sense, you can say that this is kind of origin of impersonalism, because words cannot describe. It's inexplicable. So things actually is impersonal. Words can describe. And it's
No, not in that sense. Because we are talking about creator. Creator cannot be impersonal. Creator is a person. He is creating something. And energy is byproduct of the creator, or it's subordinate to the energetic. Energy is coming from an energetic. An energetic is a person. So there can be innumerous understandings of the energy, but ultimately the source of energy is energetic, a person. So it's not directly hinting to the impersonal explanation, but in the material realm, we have to speak these terminologies like creator, maintainer, proprietor, although it apparently shows a flow of time being perceived in those ideologies or in those understandings. The flow of time is there and destruction is there. Krishna himself uses that. I am the time, I am the destroyer of everything. So he is talking about himself and his energies, but he is relating with the world we are living in. He is relating that with that, so that we can understand, he is like that person. So we can appreciate. So things are spoken for our appreciation and acceptance of the material realm. But when it comes to the spiritual realm, it's very difficult to conceive. Even if a person from the spiritual world comes in front of us and starts explaining about what is spirit and how things are there, we cannot conceive only. He may try to explain us, but we cannot conceive, because it's beyond our conception of what is spirit. Eternity. This word eternity, if we try to understand what is eternity, It's not possible for us to conceive because our thought process is limited by beginning and end. It can only think in this realm. It cannot think unlimitedly. It's eternity. How to think about this eternity? It's very difficult. We may try so much to think, try to conceive what is eternity. We are eternal. Even when we say Krishna is performing eternal pastimes, we hear, but how much do we have understanding of this statement? That Krishna is performing eternal pastime. Our eternal means, is he doing the same activity again and again and again and again and again, just like we do in a movie, some small clip we do, replay again and again and again. Something like that. What is, he's performing the pastime eternally. We tend to get bored if we continue doing some activity for 10 minutes again and again, same way. 10, 15, 1 hour, how much we can go on? One time we'll feel exhausted. Okay, that's enough. I want to change now. So, it's very difficult to conceive those concepts of what is eternity and things like that. It's our mind has no ability. Yes, Prabhu.
No, I was thinking earlier when you were talking about people that have questions about where God came from. You can back up. I just had this thought. Okay, let's back up. Let's just say I'm asking, where's God come from? So, well, first of all, where do you come from? Right?
Yeah.
How many of your generations can you even figure out?
Yeah.
Not very many.
Yeah.
Maybe 10.
Maybe not even 10.
Yeah,
10 is...
10.
We have to go and find out some records, maybe that's why how we'll get to know 10 generations.
Yeah, so
3/4 is maximum what person know.
let's just say you're lucky and you have some big dynasty, like you're from the Brigu dynasty. But anyway, so let's just say, okay, you're going to live 80, 100 years maybe, and you've lived your previous life. So let's just go back to the beginning of this particular Kali Yuga, 5,000 years. How are you going to figure out where you came from there? It's impossible.
No.
Then the next 1,200,000, whatever Treta Yuga was, where were you then? And then the previous Yuga,
Yeah.
and then
Dwapar
Satya
and
Yuga.
Satya Yuga.
Okay, where did you come from? Okay, and then before that, there was a whole other set of yugas.
Yeah.
And so you went through that, and then you go through, what, 72 of those for one day of Brahma?
Yeah, one day of Brahma.
Okay, then try and trace it back. See what you can come up with. And then you go 72, okay, just say you make it to one day of Brahma. Brahma lives for 311 trillion, 40 billion years. How are you going to trace that back?
Not possible.
So people, so sometimes, sometimes people you can show them that. It's like, hey, you can ask this big question, but what about you? We can't even understand where we came from. What to speak of Brahma? How can you think back just a few million years from one cycle of the yugas? How can you even think back that far?
No.
How can you even calculate back that far? What to speak of 72 of those? What to speak, that's only one day, so it's like, and then it's only one breath of Mahavishnu. How can you calculate? You can't even get back that far. So people's little, God, where did God come from? Forget about God, what about you? Because we can't understand. It's just like you're saying, it's not in our... But sometimes people, it's hard because they argue, they want to know. What about God? No, what about you?
Thank you all very much for your kind attention.